you're getting ready to approach the Christmas season or putting your plans in place for the Christmas season, you might be feeling a certain sense of nervousness, perhaps because this is the first time that you've had Christmas in your business, or maybe it's because it's not the first time that you've had Christmas in your business and you are aware of all of the work that you have coming up ahead of you. Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm the founder of the Resilient Retail Club, which is my membership group and mastermind for product businesses. You can find out more at resilientretailclub.com. I'm also the host of the podcast, and I'm delighted that you're joining us today, along with Mike Cole, who is a coach with a big background in corporate business, including corporate retail, and a real focus on strategies and tactics that can help support you as the business owner when it comes to this forward planning. So I'm excited to jump in to the conversation with Mike today. It's part of our 6-part series. This is part number 2 of a 6-part series on getting ready for Christmas. So don't forget to go back and check out last week's episode 204. And we're going to be covering lots more about Christmas in the next few weeks as well. But today's episode is all about getting you ready so that you can not just make it through Christmas in one piece, but maybe even actually enjoy it.
Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Catherine Eardley. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing, breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business.
Mike, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Do you want to kick us off by introducing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, thanks so much for having me along, and I'm really excited to be getting into this subject and exploring Christmas, etc. Brilliant, really excited. So I'm Mike Cole. Nowadays, as you know me, I'm a coach. But if we went back a little way, then I actually was a chartered accountant and worked in corporate finance, worked as an auditor. I had manufacturing clients and audited retail clients as well. So very excited to be exploring retail subjects, which is really cool. Nowadays, yeah, coach. And I guess my sort of tagline thing is making work better for everyone. And that's very deliberately, both for obviously directly for my clients, but wherever they're at, whether they're running their own business, whether an employee, whether a supplier, a customer, but also making it better for everyone that they interact with as well. And so really excited to be here and hopefully can do a bit of that through this.
Amazing. Well, yeah, absolutely. So you know what we're talking about when we're talking about the Christmas rush. So
Totally.
and yes, it's a phenomenon. And I love the fact that you're talking about making work better for everyone. And what we're talking about really in this session is making Christmas better for all of those people who are listening, who are thinking, I've got to do this, I've got to get myself ready. And I think sometimes it can feel quite daunting to, whether or not it's your first Christmas, you're not sure what to expect, or even sometimes if it's your 10th and you know what to expect, but you have to start getting yourself ready. So when you're looking at business strategies, and I know you do a lot of this with your clients, thinking about a strategy, whether it's overall or whether it's about getting ready for this busy time period like Christmas, what's the key elements that you suggest that people incorporate in this strategy, this preparation, to make sure that they've basically done as much forward thinking as they possibly can?
It's a really good place to start, isn't it? So for me, it's all about the quality of the plan. Or at least if there's one thing to get right, that quality of the plan is what will set you up for real success or real failure, or at least maybe not failure, but really difficult time.
Yes.
And I think that some of the key elements within that, I'm a believer that we're different, different people are different. And what I'd say is not all tasks are equal. Not all jobs or priorities or things are equal. And you've probably heard of the juggling different balls scenario. So let's say you've got a whole bunch of different balls and you're juggling them. Some are rubber, right? And so, or is rubber bouncy? So you drop
Yes.
it and it doesn't do any damage. It bounces a bit back.
Yeah.
probably grab it back, no harm done. Some might be a bit like a beanbaggy kind of thing that kind of just goes a bit flip on the floor, almost no harm. All right, it's a bit of a shame, but no harm. And some are glass and they just bang, shatter, right?
Yeah.
And so what I think we've really got to do, in fact, there's a few things on planning. I think one of the key elements is thinking, what are those glass ones that are super critical to make sure that I actually do those? And in my experience of working this through with people, the shocker is they're probably not the things that jump straight to mind. It's
Okay, it's
quite
interesting.
fascinating.
Are they always business related? Because I suppose when you're talking about all of these different balls, so this could be inside the business context, but as we're 360-degree people, and especially if you're a small business owner, then when you're almost looking at this, you've got to incorporate all of the balls in your life. And often you've got several which are business and several which aren't. So when you find which ones are these glass ones, this is sometimes actually not even the ones in the business that maybe you thought that's what you'd find.
That's exactly it. And that is spot on.
Yeah.
What happens is people define their business ones, make their business plan, but
Yeah.
actually it's very hard for us to distinguish or to entirely separate ourselves out of our businesses. And so if we define those glass balls or the task or the key things across the whole of our life, the whole of our world, then we see what those really are. And they could be a key relationship. That might be something to do with like children or elderly parents. It could be a health condition. It could be as simple as a certain activity, running, reading, a bath, for whatever. Just a certain activity is the difference of you being stressed and not stressed, or the thing that just is the pressure release valve, right? Let's use bath as an example because bath just sounds a luxury, doesn't it? But if that
Yeah.
was the thing for somebody, that should be the glass ball that's not dropped. And the reason that's such a shocker for them is because they think, but it's a luxury, Mike. It's like, no, because if that's the thing that makes the difference, it needs to be there. And this is where the personalization comes in, because for me, it's not a bath. My brother loves running. If he doesn't go for a run, there's a real kind of issue, like almost literally mental health issue. He doesn't perform as well if he's not been out running. That's just how he is. That's fantastic. He loves
Yeah.
it. But guess what? A glass ball, go for a run. It's got to be in there.
Yeah.
And obviously that's a time and an energy thing. It's really important.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah, I'm going to say I'd probably put baths on there. And actually, I distinctly remember when I was pregnant, which was many years ago, when kids are teenagers now, but you can't have, or you're not supposed to, or you're supposed to limit your hot baths when you're pregnant. It was really hard. It was really difficult. So I love that. So almost start with working out what are your non-negotiables. Would that be another way of thinking about it?
Spot on. Yeah, absolutely. So we start with the non-negotiables. I think there's two other key bits that I would like to consider. The first is, are you aware of the phrase happy path? Have you ever heard of happy path?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So happy path is when everything works for you. So imagine that you're trying to achieve something. Let's try and think of an exciting one. You're going on holiday, right? You're going to go and lie on a beach in Spain somewhere, and it's going to be amazing and brilliant. A happy path is you go online and buy your tickets at the best possible price. And then you book your hotel again, amazing price. Actually, they upgrade you. Oh, isn't that kind? And on your journey to the airport, there's no queues. It's all nice and simple. Everything goes to plan. And that's really the point of Happy Path. So every single step all works the best it could have worked. And we have a real tendency of doing our plans to be like, we're going to do Happy Path planning. It's all that's a 1 hour task. Then it's a 1 hour task. And I can do another 1 hour task, another 1 hour task, another 1 hour task. And I can do all of these, like eight hours worth of whatever we think we can do in a day, right?
Yeah.
Stacked on top of each other. But actually, can we do 8 Happy Path? Like, if it did take us an hour and every single one, can we really do those all back to back in that way? And that links to the second point, which is the capacity planning. So we have a really bad habit of overcommitting ourselves, is what I've noticed when it comes to these sort of plans. And I reckon the run to Christmas in particular that this is true for. So we think, how much available time do I have? Whatever that might be. And I'd encourage someone's listening to it now, just think, run up to Christmas, how much available time do you realistically have on a day-to-day basis to be doing work on your business? And then I'd say, in your plan, how many are you using? Because what we tend to do, say, I've got 8 hours on this day, or 10 hours, or 12 hours, or whatever it is. And then we say, great, I'm going to use all of them. So what I see is someone say, Mike, I can do a 12-hour day. I can do a 12-hour day, and I can work weekends. And I can do that because with a 6-week run to Christmas is so intense. I've just got to get my head down and I've got to push through and I've got to do it. And they effectively make their plan to use all that time.
Right.
And then the first thing that goes wrong they have no bandwidth. There is nothing they can do to get back on track because, well, nothing they can do within their hours. They can't just work an extra hour
Yeah.
or pick something up on Saturday morning or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because they're massively overcommitted. So is there such a thing as a percentage of saying, sometimes I think I need to look at how long I think something's going to take me and then double it, because that's usually the relationship between what I think is realistic and what actually is going to happen. But is it as simple as that? Or is it something you learn as you go along if you watch out for it in yourself?
I would like to encourage the latter, that people look out for it and try and be honest with themselves.
Mm,
I do have a percentage I would like, whether it's realistic or not, I don't know, but like ideally 80%. So you'd
right.
hold
Okay.
20% back.
Yeah.
In all reality, I expect everyone to take a big sharp breath. Oh, I couldn't do that. As
Yeah.
in, literally in 10 days, you would only schedule 8. Oh, I couldn't do that. So you say, okay, we'll stretch it. What about 9 days in 10? Or 9 hours in 10 is what you're scheduling, and you're holding an hour back. When you talk days, it sounds quite luxurious, but I'd
Mm,
have a whole day spare a fortnight.
mm,
But the point is, you won't have a whole day spare a fortnight. You've got one day to fight all the immediate fight as everything cascades because things drift behind, because things are
mm.
going wrong. Hopefully they're not going wrong, but if they are,
It's
it's a
taking
fire
longer.
break. You
Yeah.
have an opportunity to take the fire break and then get yourself back on track again, rather than the whole thing going. And of course, as these little things start to hit each other and we get a bit behind, so then that hits the next task, this is where the glass balls fall. Because then we think that nice idea of, but I could just have an hour-long bath or a half-hour bath
Yeah.
or a 15-minute bath. That's not really worth running a bath for 15 minutes, is it? So we just stop. And that's where these things happen. And
Mhm.
I think that flows personally into a cascade. It's like cascade failure. So when do you make your best decisions? Like when are you at your most creative or your best like performance?
Right.
And I think
Are you asking? Are you asking me, or are you asking everyone listening to think about this? So when do you make your best decisions?
both.
Yeah. So
I'll
let's
ask
start with
you.
that. Oh, when do I make my best decisions? Probably in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's happened before you've made your good decisions? What's the run up to you being able to make good decisions?
I've had my breakfast.
Yeah, fab.
I've
You're fed.
been to the gym.
Done some exercise. Excellent.
Yeah, kind of emptied the dishwasher, hung the washing out,
Yeah. All right.
got ready for the day.
Feeling organised. You got
Yeah, yeah,
ready. Had a good night's sleep, hopefully,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
All right, fab. And I should let the listeners know I've not pre-warned you that I was going to ask that. Sorry. I very much put you on the spot. Apologies about that.
It's
But the
okay.
point being, where you don't make your best decisions is when you're tired, when you're
Mm,
hungry,
yeah.
when you've not had a chance to get out and move, so some form of exercise, and that will vary for different people. But if they've been sat at their desk or lugging boxes and packing stuff up hour
Mm,
after hour, do
mm,
we make good decisions?
no.
Absolutely not. And so the reason I think we can end up with this like cascade failure is because we stop prioritizing self-care. We
Mhm.
stop prioritizing the stuff that we need so we make good decisions. And guess what? We're less productive. Now our happy path planning gets even worse because what we thought was an hour-long task, which would have been an hour-long task if we were on it,
Yeah.
is now an hour and a half task. And so then we don't sleep as well. Then we stop prioritizing ourselves even more. Then we think, I know what, I won't work. I'll just work through lunch. I'll
Mm,
just press on through. And I rather like the analogy of borrowing energy. I really like watching
mhm.
professional cycling. So the Tour de France
Yeah.
style teams just at it for 3 weeks. I mean, I don't think I could cycle a single day's worth of what they cycle, let alone it's amazing what they do.
Yeah, yeah.
And they really push themselves and they really go for it. What's interesting is they talk a lot about power in cycling. And so you can sustain a certain amount of power
Mhm,
and you can go faster or you can put more power down to all about the watts, put the watts in.
mhm.
But then they talk about going into the red. And going into the red is where you've gone outside of what you can do and sustain, or that you could do for a short period of time and recover from.
Mhm.
So there's stuff that we can do that we do a bit more. It gets hard, it's hard, it's hard, but we can bring ourselves back down and we're fine. We are absolutely fine. It's made no real impact or damage to us or whatever.
Mhm.
What we need to do is make sure that when we do these boosts, because it's super busy, because Christmas is such a busy time,
Yeah.
that we don't go into the red. Because what we're
Right.
doing when we go into the red is it's like our battery. If we imagine a laptop battery draining down, let's say it drains at a kind of relatively steady pace, right?
Hmm.
And if we include self-care, hopefully the draining is a bit more wavy. So if anyone's listening, imagine now a sort of a wavier line. You've got sort of level bits and drops and level bits and drops.
Yeah.
And then what we do when we go into the red is just a sharp down. It's just
Right.
that line just suddenly takes a massive nosedive down, and it's really hard to recover it. Really hard to recover it. And again, it's this idea that if we set ourselves up for success in the plan by defining what we're trying to get out of it, effectively making sure we've got our glass balls covered, the absolute essentials, things we
Hmm.
absolutely need for ourselves or for the business, making sure that those are in the non-negotiables. If we then consider giving ourselves these fire breaks of time so that we're not just working on happy path, we have
Right.
such a strong opportunity to make it work.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think that there's a few things that really springs to mind because I think that this is what does make it so tricky for small business owners at Christmas because number one, the stakes are high. It's not uncommon for 50% of your annual income to be coming in the 6-week run up to Christmas if you're a gift-led business. So that's half your business year effectively happening at 6 weeks. We are often parents, siblings, children. We've got caring responsibilities of lots of different natures, often responsible for the family Christmas. So in terms of the emotion, it's like your busy time personally and your busy time professionally. And I think that's one of the reasons when you were talking, I was just thinking, this is why we're talking about Christmas in the summer. Why I bang on about this subject so much is because it's looking at that time period, like you say, and not doing the happy path and going, do you know what? I could probably do all my marketing in November, or I'll probably get by without that extra pair of hands. I think it'll all be fine. But actually, like you say, going, okay, in my ideal world, I would say for all small business owners, if the only things that they have to do in November and December are sell and serve their customers, that is ideal. If everything else that is required for Christmas preparation can just shuffle out of that time period, shuffle forward, shuffle all the way into the summer, right? Doing your prep, then exactly as you said, you're not doing that thinking where you're like, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. And then before you know it, half your team have got COVID and you've been up till 2 a.m. sending stuff out. And then it's one customer email that says, where's my parcel? I can't believe you've taken my money. And that's it. You're just emotionally distraught, right? I like that, the cascade failure, right? It's all just gone. I was going to say gone to pot, but I mean, it's kind of can feel like that, right? And I
Can.
think it's absolutely fine to have your goal for Christmas to get through and not crawl into that Christmas to New Year week and just want to hide in your bed.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, one of the lovely ways of looking at how successful was my Christmas period, of course, I absolutely expect the listeners to be going, income, like
Yeah.
how many things I sold, how happy my clients with, so I actually was getting, so the customers buying it and leaving good reviews, of course, but basically income, right? That's the main
Yeah.
thing. So here's a little extra one. What about how much you can enjoy Christmas? In other words, how much do you recover from when the moment that the store is closed, whether it's online or physical shops done,
Yeah.
closed? As you've mentioned, you're probably, but now I actually have to, maybe I've got family coming around, I've got to maybe wrap loads of presents, I've got all of that
Yeah.
stuff too. But actually, if you hit that and are poorly, if you hit all of that and need 2 weeks of absolute nothingness because you're so drained, you're probably going too far into the red.
Yeah.
And this is the moment. So if that happened last year to somebody, this is
Yeah.
the moment, as you say, in the summer, to be going, how do I plan so I don't have that? And what we've talked so far about structuring some of that. But you're right, the more we can pull early, the better. The more we can structure in so that we're just focused, the one thing we have to do, or maybe two kind of main things we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Keeping customers happy, so getting the orders out, and selling, making
Yeah.
sure that potential customers know this is there and that they want it, right? And I think there's something else you mentioned, that COVID piece. The other one I would say that what do we do if our team suddenly come down ill? What do we do if we come down ill? What if in all the other things that are going on in our worlds, suddenly there's an extra pressure, there's a family member that's poorly and we want to help out, we need to help out? I would really encourage having a business continuity plan. And I say that, I took a little breath in because I didn't really want to say the words I was trying to think of a better way in that moment. Oh, is there a better way of phrasing it? So business continuity plan. And I don't know, is this something you often talk about, Catherine? Has it
No,
come up?
no. I mean, I've heard it in a corporate context, but I love in this idea for small business owners because usually the answer is when your team's sick, you step up and all kinds of chaos ensues.
So here's the logic. So the logic is at the worst possible moment, let's just consider what would you do if you were sick or if your
Mm.
team was sick. And of course, default one is I'll just step it up more and do more work.
Yeah,
That works if you've got the fire breaks, if you've got that capacity spare. But if you've
yeah,
already committed all your capacity, you're in trouble, right? That's
yeah,
why that
yeah.
planning is so important. So what I'd encourage looking at is what other options have you got? So
Right.
is there a team member that I could lean on a bit more? Could I encourage the team generally to step it up a bit?
Mhm.
Is there someone who has worked with me before that I'm very friendly with who just come in and help me out, basically? Bit of a
Mhm.
favor. And this is well worth considering because it can be outside of your work. So is it that actually, if someone could do the school runs for me for
Mhm.
2 weeks,
Mhm.
that would just make a difference. And actually, my friend Bob, Janet, whoever, I think they do it for me. So I don't
Mm.
even need to ask them. I don't need to make that like an official thing, although I might want to.
Yeah.
But I could, but just knowing, do you know what? If it all goes, not if it all goes wrong, but if the beginning of that cascade failure starts, or
Mm.
if someone is poorly or ill, or I hit with one of these curveballs, actually, probably the first thing I do is get someone else to pick the kids up. And then that gives me an extra hour a day, which I can deploy into this. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
the way
that
I
makes
look at the
total sense.
continuity, yeah,
Yeah. It's such a good point because I think I always like the phrase plan for the worst and hope for the best.
yeah,
It reminds me when I was working full time in a corporate role, and so was my husband, and we had two small children, and you can't just have plan A and plan B for childcare, but you also need like C and D because there were these just occasions where all of a sudden the babysitter's ill and then the backup person's away, and then it's like you can't just not go to work that day, or certainly this was a while before the pandemic, so there really wasn't as much working from home. So, you just had to have all these options. And it's like you're saying with the business, you have to go through and go, right, I'm going to make the plan, but I'm going to say if this person's ill, because also it quite often happens, like, especially I see it with people who run independent retailers, physical shops, like if one person gets sick, then everyone gets it. And then the whole, it's like the shop owners in there and covering everybody's shift. So it's like, how do you strike the balance between, do you pay for an extra pair of hands just in case you need it, but then that can be a big extra expense. But it's almost like you're saying, going through and doing like let's look at scenario A, and then if that happens, then what could that person step in? And then if that person's ill, almost like you got to give yourself 3 or 4 steps, and you may never get that far, but it's a heck of a lot better to have done it and not need it than to not done it and need it.
yeah. And if you just considered the first step of all of those,
Yeah.
assuming that you haven't already done, that's a
Yeah.
massive improvement
Yeah. Yeah.
from nothing, right? Just the
Yeah.
first step. And actually, the sickness is a great example. So let's say you've got a shop, one of your team gets sick, but they know it's a busy time. They're committed. You've got a really engaged set of staff, and they're game, right? So they've come in and they're pushing through. And you're right, they take the rest of the team out. So actually, there is something you could do about that straight away. The thing you could do going into that time is to make it really clear that actually, if they're poorly, yes,
Yeah.
it's amazing that they soldier through. But the most important thing, if they're poorly, is they don't give it. Aside from they get better,
Yeah.
is that they don't give
Yeah.
it to anyone else,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
one person short, the team might be able to cover, but 5 people short,
Yeah.
and I need a whole new set of staff for a week. So actually, the initial step, and then you were describing thinking of the, let's say, 3 steps beyond. But the first one, when you do that thinking, it may get to, oh, God, I can't have a whole spare team. No, but what could you do to then avoid that happening in the first place? We
Yeah.
can't stop people
Yeah.
being sick, but we can encourage that people always wash their hands properly, that they wash
Yeah.
before they eat. We
Yeah.
can make sure that they can have breaks where they can like properly sit down and eat. What can we do to structure it in a way that minimizes these risks for, in that case, the staff?
Yeah, for sure. And I wonder if you had any thoughts about what happens if now, hopefully, everyone listening to this is going to go away and think about this and avoid their happy path planning and work out their non-negotiables. And as I said, I think it's a great goal to have for your Christmas that you get through and still love your family by the end of it and aren't just like completely stressed out. But what happens if with these things, these are skills you develop over the time of your business. But what happens if you don't quite get it right and it does go into cascade failure? Is there a almost like a emergency stop button, or is there anything you can do in the midst of it all?
Yeah. So somebody listening to this is going to go into, well, actually, no one listening to this is going to go into cascade failure because they're going to have sorted their plan out. In reality, just statistically, it's likely it's going to happen to somebody just because this stuff happens. And more than likely, that may have been something they could have seen, but it may well not have been something they'd considered in their plan. And that's part of how we iterate and make plans better year on year. But there's a learning to that. And unfortunately, that's a bit of life. Okay, what do you do if it starts to go wrong? One of the best things is to recognize that it is starting to go wrong. In other words, noticing that it's beginning to go wrong rather than I'm already at a pretty catastrophic level of problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so if we start with this bit, how do you see that and how do you know? I think a really good way, this is where like key performance indicators, KPIs can play into it. So that could be around the actual staff or the operations of the shop. I might just focus on the individual, the business leader for a second. For them, I'd say when you start to feel overloaded or stressed, how does that show up? And for a lot of people, it's physical. So quite a few people I talk to, they feel a physical like pressure maybe on their chest, maybe like neck pain or shoulder. And I would actually, and this sounds a bit weird, but I would reflect on how it shows up for me. And then I would give it a score. And I'd literally throughout this period have a, how's my neck pain today? 0. Good. How's my neck pain? 2. Okay. Interesting. How's my neck pain? And there's a degree which is fine. Let's say less than 3, but I'm making on a 0 to 10 scale. Let's say that's less than 3, but I'm making that up, right? This is again a very personalized thing. If I go over 3, am I worried? No, but it's starting to make me notice that what's the trend? What's going on here? But if I'm getting into the 6 or 7s, then actually I need to be a lot more careful. And I'm suspecting that a 7 and an 8 is I'm into the things are getting away from me. So I think the first thing to help try and stop us getting into this place is to recognize it early and then activate whatever our contingency was. In other words, chances are it's to get more help. And that may well be what other responsibilities can I release myself from so that I can go in and solve this problem? If my team are capable of solving the problem, how can I help them free themselves up? That's not by me doing it, by the way, but almost like what can I deprioritize for them?
Yeah.
What can I make the lofty decision to help them free up their time so they can go solve the problem? Because again, they don't necessarily want to drop anything because they don't want to let us down. But if it's my decision, we're not dropping it. That's okay. That was a trade-off. So then what happens if we're in the full-on cascade failure level 7, 8 on this 10 score and the world feels awful? Absolutely pause button time. So go take a moment, like literally take a breath, but like properly take a breath. Ignore the world for a second, just a second. Reground yourself. I'm a huge fan of looking at the sky for this, come rain or shine pretty much, because clouds are almost always different. Whether it's nighttime, there might be stars. Just have a second to look up, take a really deep breath. Just ground yourself for a moment and then go, what one key step can I make that will take me in the right direction? Just one key step. And take that step. Do the same thing again. What's the next step? Because what happens in these moments is we look up and we see a mountain that's so big and so scary that it overwhelms us. Whereas if that's an overused analogy probably, but if we just focused on the next step, then we go, I can do 5. I've got 5 steps in me, but I'm not even going to worry about what those 5 steps are. I'm just going to take the next one. I take that next one, and do you know what? I've still got 5 steps in me because I can still feel it and I'm okay. I'm going to take one more. But I'm not going to look at 6 or 7 or 8 steps. And I'm not even going to look at the 5. I'm not going to look at everything I could do. I'm just going to say the one big thing that's going to make a difference. So I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to do the next one. Then I'm going to do the next one. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's great. Yes, thank you so much. That's great advice. I do hope that what we hopefully avoided is cascade failure by pointing out how you got to be realistic. You've got to give yourself the best fighting chance you've got to get through this 4th quarter and be thinking about it now in the summer to help you avoid doing that. But it's been brilliant to have you on. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insight. Do you want to wrap up by letting everyone know where they can find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share just one other bit as well. And I can't stress this enough. Be kind to yourself throughout this time. It's quite possible no one else is going to be kind to you. So be kind to yourself. Okay, they should be, but it's a stressful time for everyone around this. So yeah, genuinely be kind to yourself and look after yourself, because that is the biggest game changer in its own right through this. So if anyone wants to come and connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn at This Mike Cole, or come to the website, which is Millico, because I work with my wife. She's called Liz. So you can work out a little puzzle if you like. Won't take you very long to work out how we got to Millico. So millico.uk, come along there. I've got a wonderful quiz that's really cool, and it's all about how well you're thriving at work and what could help you thrive more at work. And it comes down to the idea that when a flower doesn't grow and blossom, right, we need to look at the environment, not the flower. So if something isn't quite right for somebody, don't beat themselves up why they can't do it. Let's look at the environment they're in to see how that can change so they can. And that's what the quiz is about. It takes less than 60 seconds to do, and it's a really cool quiz. So I'd love it if people came along to that. I think the link is in with the show notes.
Yeah,
so they can go and see it there.
Show notes for sure.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Why not head over to Instagram at Resilient Retail Club, tag me into where you're listening to the podcast. And of course, if you have a moment to rate and review the podcast, it makes such a difference. You can do that in Apple Podcasts, and you can also rate and follow the podcast in Spotify. And of course, if you follow, subscribe, whatever it's called on the platform that you're using to the podcast, then you will be the first to know about each and every episode, which comes out every Thursday.